Nestled in the luxurious hills of Beverly Hills, California, lies a mansion once owned by Barbara Stanwyck, the legendary actress of Hollywood's golden age. Known for her fiery personality and captivating performances, Stanwyck's home reflected her bold and glamorous spirit. But decades after her passing, whispers about the mansion have added an eerie layer to its charm. Neighbors have long reported strange occurrences around the property. On calm nights, when the neighborhood is quiet, some claim to hear faint voices emanating from the house, as if an unseen party is underway. The tone isn't menacing, it's more like the hum of life, frozen in time. Even stranger are the unexplained lights. Neighbors have described beams flickering through the windows as if someone is walking room to room, checking on things. Security patrols called to investigate find no signs of intrusion. The house, though vacant, appears to have a presence all its own. Barbara Stanwyck was known for her dedication to her craft and her strong connection to the home she cherished. Friends of the actress noted she often referred to the house as her sanctuary. Some have speculated lightheartedly that her lingering energy is a testament to her love for the place. While there's no definitive explanation for the lights and sounds, paranormal enthusiasts have taken an interest. Investigators equipped with cameras and audio equipment have tried to capture evidence, but nothing conclusive has ever emerged. The mansion, whether touched by the supernatural or not, remains a symbol of old Hollywood's allure. For some, the stories only enhance its mystique, making it a place of fascination for those who love classic cinema. If you ever find yourself in Beverly Hills, strolling past the homes of yesteryear stars, remember Barbara Stanwyck's mansion. Whether it's a trick of the mind, the echo of history, or something more, the house remains as intriguing as the woman who once called it home. In the heart of Beverly Hills, surrounded by manicured lawns and towering palm trees, Barbara Stanwyck's former mansion has become more than a relic of Hollywood's golden age. It's a puzzle that refuses to be solved. While some dismiss the stories as urban legend, others swear that the home holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. One night, a neighbor walking their dog recounted hearing a faint melody drifting through the air, like an old jazz tune playing on a gramophone. The sound seemed to come from the direction of Stanwyck's home, yet when they approached, the property was dark and still. Others have reported catching glimpses of movement from the corner of their eye, just a shadow, fleeting but deliberate, vanishing as soon as it's noticed. A few years ago, a delivery driver, unfamiliar with the area, claimed to have seen a woman standing at one of the second-floor windows. She had the elegant silhouette of someone from another era, wearing what looked like a vintage gown. The driver thought nothing of it until a neighbor casually mentioned that no one had lived in the house for over a decade. Curiosity grew, and some local history enthusiasts began digging through archives, seeking clues about the mansion's past. They discovered that Stanwyck wasn't the only Hollywood icon connected to the house. Before her, it had belonged to a reclusive silent film star whose life ended in tragedy. Did the layers of Hollywood history leave behind more than just memories? Rumors also swirl about a hidden room within the mansion, a space few ever knew existed. Stories suggest that Stanwyck used the room for private retreats, away from the public eye. Some say it was her sanctuary, while others whisper about secret Hollywood meetings that took place within its walls. Today, anyone who dares to step onto the property claims to feel a distinct chill near a particular wing of the house, as though the air itself is heavier. But what's most peculiar is that no official blueprints of the house have ever shown this mysterious room. So where did the rumors come from? And why do they persist? Recently, a Beverly Hills historian uncovered an old photograph of the mansion from the 1930s. In the photo, a faint figure can be seen in an upper window. Though blurred by time, the image reignited local speculation. Was it a trick of the light? A photographic flaw? Or was it a clue that the mansion's story isn't just about its glamorous past but something that lingers even now? The stories surrounding Barbara Stanwyck's Beverly Hills mansion seem endless, each one adding another layer to its enigmatic history. While skeptics chalk it up to overactive imaginations, the sheer consistency of the tales makes it harder to dismiss. And yet, the house itself remains quiet until it doesn't. A private security guard hired to patrol the affluent neighborhood reported an unsettling experience one evening. It was around 2 a.m., and the guard was making his usual rounds when he noticed a faint light flicker in one of the upper windows of Stanwyck's mansion. Curious, he parked his car and approached the property. Through the iron gates, he saw what looked like a candle's glow, moving steadily from room to room. Then it stopped abruptly. Standing in the shadows, the guard radioed his team, but before he could explain, his transmission was cut off by static and eerie, rhythmic pulse that sounded almost like someone breathing. When backup arrived minutes later, there was no sign of the light, and the house was as silent as the grave. The guard refused to patrol that route again, citing a presence he couldn't describe but would never forget. Years before Stanwyck's passing, a fan mailed a letter to the mansion, expressing their admiration for her and sharing a peculiar dream they had about the house. The letter, however, was never opened. It remained tucked inside the wall of a forgotten cabinet, discovered decades later during a minor renovation. What was unusual was the dream described in the letter. The fan claimed to have seen a woman in a flowing dress standing in a grand hallway, looking directly at them. The fan detailed the exact layout of the house, down to the distinctive shape of the chandelier in the main foyer, a design not visible from the street or in any photographs at the time. The letter was dismissed as coincidence, but some wonder, was it a dream at all, or something the fan had truly seen? And how could they have known about the chandelier? In the 1940s, a renowned artist visited Stanwyck's home to paint her portrait. According to local lore, the artist became so disturbed while working in the house that they left the piece unfinished. What's strange is the detail they managed to complete: the background, which featured the mansion's living room. Though the painting was never hung, those who have seen it describe something unsettling about the room depicted. A shadow looms in the corner, faint but undeniably human-shaped. The artist claimed it was unintentional, a result of the brushwork, but they refused to return to the house to finish the portrait. While the main house captures most of the attention, there's a lesser-known part of the property that has stirred its own rumors: the cellar. Workers who have been inside describe an overwhelming sense of unease, as if being watched by unseen eyes. One contractor quit abruptly after hearing faint whispers in a language they couldn't identify. Another swore they found an old, leather-bound journal tucked behind the wine racks, only to have it vanish when they returned to retrieve it. No records exist of what was written in the journal, but one worker claimed to have glimpsed the word "unfinished" scrawled repeatedly on one of its pages. Today, the mansion sits quietly, its windows dark and its doors firmly shut. But those who pass by often slow their steps, casting a glance up at the second floor, half expecting to see something or someone looking back. And yet, the questions remain. Who or what might still linger in the house? Why do so many details about its history seem to resurface when least expected? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the story of Barbara Stanwyck's mansion isn't over. In fact, it may just be beginning. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. As the years pass, the mansion that once echoed with the glamorous life of Barbara Stanwyck has become a silent witness to the passage of time, yet its mysteries persist, growing more intricate with each passing tale. For every whispered account, every strange occurrence, the mansion's true story seems to remain just beyond reach, as if it's hiding in plain sight. But what if the house itself knows more than it lets on? One late evening, a local photographer who had been hired to document the mansion for a historical archive was startled by the sound of footsteps, soft but distinct, coming from the upper floors. Thinking it was a part of his imagination, he continued setting up his equipment, but the footsteps grew louder, almost as if someone or something was walking toward him. He paused, heart pounding, but there was no one in sight. He carefully ascended the staircase, camera in hand, determined to prove that the house was empty. But when he reached the second floor, something stopped him in his tracks. The unmistakable smell of perfume, delicate and floral, lingered in the air. Curiously, he walked down the hallway where the scent seemed strongest, but it led him to a room he hadn't seen on the blueprints. The door, which had always been locked, stood ajar. He could feel the temperature drop as he peered inside, But just as he was about to step closer, the door slammed shut behind him. As he turned, his camera flashed on its own, capturing a fleeting image of a figure standing at the end of the hallway. The photograph was blurry, but in it, a woman in an old-fashioned gown could just barely be made out, her face obscured by shadows. The photographer never returned to the mansion. The film from that night, though fully developed, revealed nothing but darkness. But for those who've seen it, the memory of that shadowy figure still lingers. In the attic, an antique mirror has sat for decades, quietly tucked away in a corner. It's the type of mirror that seems to have lived through countless eras, yet remained untouched by the ravages of time. According to local legends, this particular mirror has a strange power. It doesn't just reflect what's before it. It shows something else entirely. Several people have reported strange visions when they gaze into the mirror. Some claim to see images of Stanwyck herself, not as she was, but as an older, more ghostly version of herself, her face etched with sorrow. Others say they've seen glimpses of events that happened long before they were born, like scenes from parties held in the mansion in the 1930s, or even disturbing glimpses of the mansion's previous owner, the silent film star, in the throes of a tragic fate. One visitor, a skeptic, found themselves staring into the mirror for what felt like hours, only to find that their reflection wasn't quite right. The longer they looked, the more the image of their own face seemed to shift, as if something was standing just behind them. When they turned around, nothing was there. But the mirror still held the ghostly reflection of someone watching. In the early 1950s, a guestbook was placed in the foyer of Stanwyck's mansion during an exclusive event. The guestbook, beautifully bound in leather, was intended for friends and family to sign upon arrival. However, what was found inside weeks later was far more unsettling than any ordinary guest list. In the middle of the book, there was a series of names that shouldn't have been there. The entries appeared hastily written, with no accompanying dates or context. Most bizarre of all was the last name written, Margaret. Margaret was the name of a woman who had once been a close friend of Stanwyck's, but she had mysteriously vanished in the 1940s, never to be heard from again. No one knew what happened to her, and her disappearance had long been forgotten. But somehow, she appeared in the guestbook, her name written just before the last page was torn out. The book itself vanished shortly after being discovered, though some say it was seen again, months later, left on the doorstep of a local historian's house. In the book's final pages, a strange phrase was found: "The truth is lost in the dark room." Perhaps the most puzzling of all is the strange occurrence that befell a group of amateur paranormal investigators who decided to try their hand at capturing evidence in the mansion. Equipped with high-tech audio and video equipment, they spent hours combing the house for any sign of the supernatural. Though they found nothing that seemed remarkable at first, when they returned to review the footage, they discovered something chilling. A soft, disembodied voice had appeared on their recordings, repeating the same 3 words over and over again: "Come back, please." At first, they dismissed it as interference or a malfunction. But when they played the audio again, they realized the voice sounded eerily familiar. It wasn't just any voice, it was unmistakably Barbara Stanwyck's. The tone was soft, almost pleading, as if she were calling out from another time. They tried to trace the source of the voice, but no explanation was ever found. The recordings had no logical origin, and the words, though brief, left a haunting question hanging in the air: who was she speaking to? As the years have gone by, the mansion that once served as a grand stage for Barbara Stanwyck's life has become an even darker enigma. Each new story adds to its legend, making the mansion not just a place of history, but one of unresolved mysteries, secrets that seem to cling to the very walls, whispering in the silence of the night. And just when it seems the story might be over, new chapters begin to unfold. On rare occasions, when the sun sets and the glow of twilight bathes the mansion in an ethereal light, people passing by have claimed to see a woman in the overgrown garden. At first glance, she appears to be an illusion, a trick of the light or a fleeting shadow. But as they get closer, she becomes clearer. A woman in an elegant dress, her features obscured by a veil of fog. The woman stands motionless by the fountain, as if lost in thought or waiting for someone who will never arrive. Witnesses have described her as being impossibly still, her figure almost blending with the shadows of the trees around her. When they look away for just a moment, she's gone vanished, leaving only the faint scent of roses in the air. It's said that the woman is not Barbara Stanwyck, but someone else, a figure from the mansion's forgotten past, tied to the house long before the actress moved in. Some speculate she is the spirit of Margaret, the friend who disappeared without a trace. Others suggest she is someone else entirely, a woman who never made it to the grand parties that Stanwyck once hosted. Whatever the truth, the woman's presence in the garden is a mystery that no one can quite explain. Despite the mansion's history of being passed down, renovated, and reimagined, there remains one room that's never been opened. It sits on the 3rd floor, hidden behind a thick, ornate door that has been sealed shut for decades. Stories about the room are fragmented, with each person who has dared to mention it offering a different version of what lies behind it. Some say it's just a storage room, full of forgotten items and dust, but others insist there's something more, something sinister. Several decades ago, a curious neighbor, intrigued by the rumors, managed to get access to the mansion when it was briefly on the market. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, they ventured into the dusty old halls, searching for the fabled locked room. When they finally found the door, it was as if something or someone was trying to keep them out. The air around it was thick, cold, and oppressive. The neighbor, undeterred, managed to pry open the door. What they found inside has remained a tightly guarded secret. Some say they stumbled upon a hidden collection of personal items that didn't belong to Stanwyck: old photographs, letters, and diaries that belonged to a woman whose identity no one knew. Others whisper that it was a collection of items left behind by the former owner, the silent film star, whose life had ended tragically. Some even say the room was once used for ritualistic gatherings, with a dark history that connected the house to secret Hollywood societies. When the neighbor left, they were never the same. They spoke of a deep, unsettling sense of dread that lingered in the room, and even more disturbing, they claimed that the items they had uncovered had vanished by the time they tried to return. No one has dared to open that door since. Another strange occurrence began to surface in the late 1980s, when a local musician who had long been fascinated by the history of Stanwyck's home came to visit. After learning that the mansion had once been a place of frequent gatherings and parties, they were drawn to the grand piano that sat in the living room, its keys untouched for decades. One evening, alone in the house, the musician sat down at the piano, hoping to find inspiration. But when their fingers hovered over the keys, something strange happened. The piano played by itself. It was not an eerie sound, but rather a delicate, haunting melody that seemed to float through the room. The notes were familiar, like a song that had been forgotten, but somehow still existed in the air, waiting to be heard. The musician quickly recorded the tune, hoping to capture something extraordinary. But when they listened back to the recording, the melody had disappeared. No matter how hard they tried, the song could never be reproduced. And when the musician returned to the house months later, the piano was silent once again, its keys frozen in place. As the mansion's reputation continued to grow, so did the number of people visiting in search of answers. A psychic medium who had heard about the house's strange occurrences decided to conduct a private session, hoping to connect with the spirits within. They claimed to enter the house with an open mind, but as they sat in front of a large mirror that once belonged to Stanwyck, the atmosphere shifted. The psychic began to speak to the spirits they sensed within the house, trying to make contact with Barbara Stanwyck herself. But when they gazed into the mirror, something unexpected happened. The reflection staring back wasn't their own. Instead, it was the face of a woman they didn't recognize, young, beautiful, and dressed in a style from the early 1930s. Her expression was one of sadness, yet there was something almost pleading in her eyes. As the medium stared, trying to make sense of it, the woman in the mirror slowly began to smile. But it wasn't a friendly smile, it was chilling, as if she knew something the medium didn't. Suddenly, the reflection disappeared, and the medium was left staring at their own image, shaken and speechless. It was a quiet afternoon when a local historian, digging through old records at the city archives, stumbled upon a box of items linked to the mansion's original owner, the silent film star whose life was clouded in mystery. Among the documents, one item stood out. A worn leather journal, yellowed with age, containing handwritten notes. The journal detailed the star's experiences living in the mansion during its early days. Some of the entries were typical of a Hollywood lifestyle: parties, meetings, and glamorous events. But as the journal entries progressed, the tone began to shift. The writing became more erratic, filled with cryptic symbols and references to dark corners and unseen forces. One entry in particular caught the historian's eye. It described a shadow in the garden, a shadow that followed the star wherever they went. The journal ended abruptly, with a final, haunting message: "I am not alone." The historian tried to locate the journal's owner, but all traces of it had disappeared. Some believe it was hidden for a reason, possibly to keep the darker side of the mansion's past buried. But as the historian continued their research, they couldn't shake the feeling that the mansion itself had a story it wasn't ready to tell. As the years passed, the mansion that once echoed with the laughter and footsteps of Barbara Stanwyck became more than just a historic landmark. It transformed into a place of legend, its secrets buried in shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The story's whispers of phantom footsteps, ghostly reflections, and mysterious messages only grew, each one fueling the mansion's mystique. One final strange occurrence brought everything full circle. In the 1990s, an ambitious writer, eager to delve into the mansion's dark history, spent several weeks documenting the tales surrounding the house. Late one night, while reading through the journal of the forgotten silent film star, the writer claimed to have heard a voice. It was faint at first, almost a whisper, but grew clearer as the hours passed. "It's time to leave." When the writer turned to leave, they were greeted with the unmistakable smell of roses, Barbara Stanwyck's favorite scent. The air grew cold, and the once quiet house seemed to exhale, releasing the tension that had built up over decades. The writer fled, and the house, as if satisfied, fell into its eternal silence. To this day, Barbara Stanwyck's mansion stands as a reminder of the forgotten spirits who once inhabited it, each one, in their own way, waiting to tell their story. And though many have tried to uncover the full truth, the mansion seems to guard its secrets jealously, leaving only fragments for those daring enough to listen. Some say it's not the mansion that's haunted, it's the people who venture in, forever changed by the mysteries they uncover and the shadows they awaken. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. Any coincidences with real events or characters are accidental.